Breaking news. A crisis has arisen in Putin's army, with those who support Russia killing the commander and supporting them. Every day, more and more Russian soldiers desert their units and sneak back home. The act of abandonment occurs frequently. Amago, Stanislav Krasilnikov. The Russian army is in disarray, with deserting troops and injured officers. Crimea has become a focal point. Moscow. There is no war without individual obedience. Vladimir Putin's invading forces are losing ground. More and more men are deserting Russia, including recently in the Crimea. Reports say that several members of the 8th Ejércitos 20, a division of Fusileros Motorizados in the south of the country, have mutinied against their subcommandant. The tragedy is that he only stayed briefly and then passed away there. Several separate news outlets reported this, citing Ukraine's intelligence service without providing further context. The 20th Motorized Missile Division is stationed in occupied Crimea. Invading Vladimir Putin's army, desertion appears to be the norm. This may have some bearing on how effective the counterattack is. War in Ukraine. Estos factores están relacionados, pero ciertamente también están relacionados con el poco respeto que Rusia tiene por sus soldados, como sospecha Christian Goebel. An expert on military history said as much in a podcast broadcast by the German military called Inquiry in Russia. For example, there is still what is called Dedauchina, Governo Ancestral, which refers to the severe abuse of young soldiers at the hands of their elders. Officials, too, mistreat their subordinates. There are violent regimes in general or widespread mistreatment of soldiers. Goebel quotes Russian military reserve officer turned author Mikhail Shishkin on this topic. The Russian army was and remains a espionage school, in which senior officers wield virtually unlimited authority over junior officers. Alto week in review. Crimean soldiers, fleeing an organized attack, ditched their uniforms for street clothes and fled from the Simferopol area to the neighboring Krasnodar region of Russia. More than 5 million people make their home in this area, making it impossible to remain hidden. Many refugees also head for the former Soviet states of Armenia and Kazakhstan. In March of 2023, the exiled Meduza media reported that the Russian military justice system was handing down 100 sentences per week against Russian soldiers, most of them for desertion or unauthorized withdrawal from the troops. Some sentences resulted in probation and home release, while others led to prison terms. Russian law became more stringent in September 2022, and now the penalty for desertion is up to 15 years in prison, while the penalty for voluntarily surrendering to an enemy is up to 10 years in prison. La traición es el delito más grave y los traidores deben ser castigados, dijo el presidente ruso Vladimir Putin en 2019 tras el ataque tóxico al líder de la oposición rusa Sergei Skripal. Russia's humanitarian outlook differs greatly from Europe's, a fact that was made abundantly clear during Russia's wars and is now even more so. The German think tank Stiftung Wissenschaft und Politik described the conflict in Ukraine shortly after it broke out as a stress test for Russia. Systemic justification. Their promises were kept. The authoritarian Putin regime appears to be stable for the time being, and Putin appears to have the support of his people. Therefore, the exodus of any country's armed forces is a challenge. Late last year, or just before the first year of war ended, Radio and Television Switzerland, SRF, reported that 100,000 Kazakh men responsible for military service had emigrated. In what seems to be a recurring theme, the Grupo de Fuerzas Armadas Soviéticas en Alemania, GSSD, based in the former German Democratic Republic, GDR, attempted to flee the Red Flag. Between 400 and 500 soldiers a year decided to desert out of desperation, a number that is almost hopeless. Their best hope was to sneak back into their home countries under false pretenses before being apprehended by sympathetic locals or the police. After that, captured fugitives typically received minimal care, including lengthy prison terms, palaces until they collapsed, forced labor camps, and the death penalty. Unlike Russian conscience objectors, Russian military deserters are eligible for asylum in Germany, according to the Red Alemana deliberation, citing the Federal Ministry of Migration and Refugees, BAMF. According to post-war decision-making practice regarding the situation in Russia, deserters should continue to have regular international protection. Individuals who are drafted into the military but refuse to serve may be eligible for international protection if certain criteria are met. In particular, we are talking about persecution-related actions. Although similar situations are likely to occur less frequently among this population than among deserters. Desde el término, guerra, que se refiere al ataque a Ucrania, ya utilizado en la Federación Rusa, si bien la representación política de la oposición puede ser castigada, la deserción como expresión activa de oposición a la guerra puede considerarse una expresión de convicción opositora. Elias Canetti, a writer, agreed that deserting is the only way for an individual to make a personal statement against war. The military, particularly in times of war, is dependent on compliant soldiers and thus fears individual authority. The voices of many Russian soldiers' criticisms were already echoing 6 months after the attack, and the figure of Russian parasitist Pavel Filatiev, whose memories were cited by the British newspaper The Guardian, is emblematic of these voices. Morally, everything would be easier to bear if Ukraine attacked us, but the truth is that we invaded Ukraine without anyone asking us to. Even if nothing else changes, I'm done supporting this craziness. Karsten Hinsman. The editorial staff relied on automated assistance while writing this piece. Christian Storr, the article's editor, gave it a thorough once-over before publication.